How we escaped.
Have it in Kindle. So having it in Kindle is great. I'm a Kindle guy, but some people love having the book in their hand.
I know my husband he wants the books in the hands, and I'm a Kindle person, so
Yeah. My Kindle's like my best friend. I take my Kindle with me everywhere.
me too.
Well, Erin, are you ready?
I am.
All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to count us in and count us down, and then we will begin.
Okay.
So here we go. 3, 2, 1.
This is the How We Escaped podcast. And now, here's your host, Rob Drake.
Greetings, fellow sojourners. Welcome to the How We Escaped podcast, where we explore the stories of people who broke free from the impossible and embraced the unknown. Escape isn't just about running away. It's about courage, survival, and the human yearning to live free and to flourish. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast or its humble host, me, Rob Drake. This podcast contains graphic descriptions of a catastrophic tragedy which may be upsetting to some, and also contains some strong language. Listener discretion is advised. As always, I want to get us to today's story as quickly as possible. Our guest today is Erin Rhatigan. She is the author of the book Campfire Girl. This is her story of survival and recovery from the deadly 2018 wildfire dubbed the Campfire, which devastated Northern California and is still considered to be the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California history. Erin, as you are about to discover, is a first-hand witness to this tragedy, very up close, because she was living and working as a nurse in Paradise, California in 2018. Her book is well worth the read. It is raw, it is real, and there is even some humor in it, and lots of interesting details, which of course we will not be able to cover all of them today. So please go to Amazon and get her book. It's called Campfire Girl. It's available in print, on Kindle, and also as an audiobook in Audible. Erin, you are on the air. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, happy to be here.
I want to start by asking you about that day, November 8th, 2018, a Thursday. Was there any point on that day when you thought that it was the end for you, that you were not going to make it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There was definitely a point. In fact, I actually was on the phone to my daughter, my stepdaughter, and she was evacuating also. She's a CNA, or she was a CNA, and was evacuating herself and fellow employees. And she called me to say she was scared, and I had to actually say goodbye to my family through her because I didn't think I was going to make it.
Where were you at that point when you felt like this could be the end?
I was actually on, it's one of the roads, main roads in Paradise. It was called Pearson Road. And I was on that road with several other people. It was, uh, and the road was on fire on both sides. And cars were burning up, trees were exploding, and we were only going about 9 miles an hour. We couldn't go any faster. And all of us were thinking, this is it. And yeah.
Well, we're going to get to this story, but first I want to go back and ask you about paradise before the fire. What was it like, and why did you move there?
Paradise Before the Fire was a wonderful um, community. Everybody, it was a close knit community. It was a small community, relatively, and everybody pretty much looked out for everybody else. In fact, my husband and I, when we were visiting, my daughter and grandkids moved to Paradise 2 years before we did. And we actually had been visiting there several times. And every time we came, people were so nice to us in the stores and wherever we went that we were kind of taken aback like, oh my God, people are so nice. What's wrong with them? So it was a great place, and as I got older and was in between jobs, I decided, well, I could find another job in the East Bay where I lived in California, or we could consider moving to Paradise to be near the grandkids, and that's what we kind of said. Well, let's go take a visit and go there and stay with the with Bridget and the kids and see if there's even any possibility that we could manage to move there. So while we were there, I actually interviewed. I went to the hospital and went to that human resources department and filled out an application. And as I was filling out the application, they said, "Hey, we can get you an interview the next day." I said, "Okay," and ended up I got a job and we looked for a house, and that's how we ended up there.
Tell us about your house. Where was it in Paradise, and what was it like?
My house it was on actually on a street called Molokai Drive, and it is just off. It's really off of the main drag of Paradise, but it's in a lovely area where it's overlooking a canyon, and it was a 2,400 square foot house, and it was the plan was to have my mom come live with us. So we were looking for a house that was big enough a multi-generational house so that she would have her own part of the house and we would have ours. Um, and we found it in that house. It was a beautiful house. It had a downstairs apartment for her, and then the rest of the house was actually all on one level for us. And it was a four bedroom, three bath house. And it had a two-car garage, it was just perfect for us. I was looking for a house that was big enough that it could host Thanksgivings, Christmas, and any other holidays for the family. And I found it in this house. It was so beautiful. It had a gorgeous backyard. Mostly it was concrete in the back and in the front, so there wasn't a lot to do keep upkeep wise for the landscaping, but it had several large, like 200-foot um, sugar pine trees throughout the whole property. And we had about, oh gosh, I think 25 to 30 trees that were just gorgeous. And we had a vegetable garden, and we had in this house, and mom always liked to garden, so it was going to be her vegetable garden, and she was so excited. And we were in the house. We hadn't been in the house but 4 months when the fire happened.
I was really interested in the story about your mom and how she came, because I felt there was a detail that you included early on in your book about what your mom brought with her when she came. It sounded like she brought quite a few things with her. What did she bring?
So she brought obviously her some of her furniture for the apartment downstairs, but she also brought um, 6 generations worth of mementos for our family. She ended up with them through the years, and there were things like letters from many generations back from the Civil War, from families that were writing to each other through the Civil War, a love letter from one family to another, and also different pictures from family all the way back to 2 or 3 generations. But then uh, we also had tablecloths that my great grandmother made, and even great aunts and great great grandmothers made. We had beautiful furniture from my great uncle, who was a woodworker, and he made some tables, and she brought some herself. I brought some that she gave me, and so we had that, and it was just a lot of our family mementos were there, and I'm sick about how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like at least some part of your house was almost like a museum.
Actually, it was throughout the house. We kind of made it, and we had pictures, but we also had different pieces of furniture all the way throughout the whole house that we believed in, using the furniture in our current homes because it was part of our past, and we loved the fact that we could look at it at any time and go, oh, I remember so and so, or gosh, that's so pretty, it works perfectly there, and I could enjoy it through more generations to come, although that didn't happen, but that was the plan.
Well, you also mentioned in your book all of the wildlife that you had in paradise. And I suppose some people would love that, but you seemed a bit more hesitant about it.
Yeah, because we were all of us urban dwellers before coming there. And so the idea that we had bears and cougars and um, skunks and uh, all different kinds of animals in our backyard, literally, at some point, was a little bit intimidating to us at first.
I bet. I mean, it sounds like for a wildlife lover, it would be a dream. When you got up in the morning and looked out your window, what would you generally see out there?
Not always, but many times we would see a herd of deer that would be in our backyard, just beyond our property. We could see them, and they were munching on different plants, not necessarily our flowers, but different plants. And then on occasion, of course, we had birds, but we also had different squirrels that would chase each other through the trees. It was hysterical to watch them. They were
Wow.
a great entertainment for us because they were just chase each other around the trees and hop from one tree to the other and look in at us from our windows too, and watch us. We felt like we were the ones in the zoo and they were the
I've never lived in California. I know that there are many places in California that are prone to forest fires. Was this something that you thought about before you moved to Paradise? How aware were you of the threat of fire?
Well, we were actually very aware because we had already been through uh, different fires, not as like the campfire, but I was a travel nurse in when the Thomas fire happened down in Santa Barbara, and I actually ended up having to evacuate from there. From my apartment there and come back to the East Bay until things calmed down. The smoke was so bad, but the fire itself, while it was close, it never got close enough that I felt threatened by the fire, but more it was from the smoke. So I'd been through that, and then we'd also been through one of the Napa fires was pretty close to coming towards Benicia where we lived, and that was close enough that we actually put all of our important papers together in a box, um, a file box, and we were had all of our important papers ready to go should we needed to evacuate the house. And so that was something we had thought about doing, and we kept all of our important papers in that box, uh, ready to go should we be in another wildfire, because it had seemed like every couple of years or every year practically there was some kind of fire somewhere in California.
The people in Paradise, the people who had lived there for years, was this something that was talked about regularly? Did people worry about this?
Yes, actually, there had been a fire in Paradise a few years before we got there, and the hospital that had actually had to be evacuated, but the fire never got close enough to the hospital. They just evacuated it just in case, and they were able to. There were really not many patients in the hospital at that time because they had watched the fire for so long that they weren't admitting anybody that they didn't need to. So and when they actually did evacuate all of the staff from the hospital, there were a few staff that stayed there waiting to see if it was going to really impact the hospital more seriously, and it never really did. But they did have to evacuate and wait it out because it was close enough that they didn't want to take any chances. So we all knew when we were there that that was a possibility that there could be a fire. But the fires up to that before the campfire never were fast moving. They were pretty slow, and they were people had enough time to evacuate safely and take up many possessions with them because they had enough time, enough warning that they could get out safely. The campfire wasn't like that.
Well, let's talk about that fateful day in November 8th, 2018. How did that day start out for you? What do you remember about that morning?
Well, that morning, I when I woke up, I was actually thought I was coming down with the flu, and I felt kind of sick, but not sick enough that I felt like I should stay home. I wasn't really sure what was going on, but I figured, well, I'll be okay because uh, there's not a lot of staff at the hospital, so you've got to go in and work. Um, so I got there a little early. I usually watch the news, and my husband and I watch the news in the morning and just get an idea of what's going on. And we were actually anticipating um, PG&E, or Pacific Gas and Electric, our electric company, to shut off the power because they were anticipating wind, and with the increased wind, they were anticipating wind gusts up to 50, 60 miles an hour, and so they were thinking about turning off the power, so that if something happened, there wouldn't be a fire. And knew about that, and we were listening to the news to see, well, are you going to do it or not? Basically, because they had been saying it for 3 days prior that they were going to, and they still hadn't decided when I left to go to work at 8 o'clock that morning.
And you mentioned that you felt like you were coming down with the flu.
Hmm.
Looking back, do you think this had to do with the smoke in the air or something in the air?
No, no. It ended up I was actually had I was coming down with diverticulitis, and I didn't know that at the time.
But was there anything when you woke up in the morning that gave you any inkling that something was wrong in terms
No,
of anything that you could smell or
no,
see?
no. Once I got out to the hospital, then yes, but going outside, there was just the only thing I can tell you is there was some extra traffic. And I had actually left earlier than I normally did. So I wasn't even sure that that extra traffic, I thought it was normal. I thought it was just because I was leaving earlier than I normally did. And before I figured, well, I probably missed most of it. And by the time I got to the hospital, when I stepped out of my car, that's when I knew something was wrong because there was ash blowing in the air. And I then could smell the smoke.
Okay, so even the drive to the hospital that morning was not very worrying
No,
for you.
no.
So you get to the hospital and just tell us what your role at the hospital was
Um, I was
at the
a
time.
I was a case manager. Most people know us by discharge planners. And so my job was to make sure that the patients that were admitted to the hospital, as soon as within 24 hours of admission, my job was to meet with them and make sure that I had a real good idea of what their home situation was, and what they typically what their house was like, how many stairs there were, and where their bedrooms were, and just understanding what they might need based on their diagnosis once they went home. And I start discharge planners basically start discharge planning from the moment of admission, essentially. And we make sure that we have all the information we're going to need to make sure that someone can go home safely and have their needs met in the best possible situation that's available to them. So that's was my job.
So how were people around you on that day at the hospital when you got there? Was it pretty calm inside?
Well, when I got out of the car and I saw the ash in the air, I immediately got on my phone to the Cal Fire website to see if there was a fire nearby. And I found out there was a fire in Polga Gap, and I had no idea where that was. So I called my husband and asked him if he knew, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's 10 miles away. We're good." So I said, "Okay." And then I walked to go into the hospital where I always go through into the physical therapy older part of the hospital. And I went through that door, and as I'm walking up to the door, I see smoke billowing out from behind the canyon from behind the hospital. And I said, "Well, that can't be good." An expletive, and then, "Oh, that cannot be good." And I went to go into the door, and there was a big sign on the door: "Keep the door closed from the smoke. Don't let the smoke into the hospital." So, yeah. So I walked in, and before I could even clock in for my shift, um, there were people hurrying by in the hallway saying, there's a fire and we may be evacuating the hospital." I hadn't even gotten to my office yet. And I thought, this is not going to be a good day. Um, and immediately got into the office, and my director said, here and handed me information and the phone and said, help these people get medications ready that they can pick up on their way out of town because they're evacuating. So I thought, well, this is not a good day. This is really not a good day.
What is it like to evacuate a hospital? Like on that day, how many patients were there? And what does that process look like?
That day we had 69 patients in the hospital. And the process varies, but mainly what it is finding out who needs to be evacuated via ambulance, who can go in a car, and who can be picked up and discharged and picked up by family. And you typically have a running list of who's in the hospital, and the nurses on each unit typically know who can go and how. So when you evacuate a hospital, it's really a big deal because you also have to find out where you're going to, for those people that can't go home, where they're going to go once you evacuate them from your hospital. You have to make sure you have a place for them and that place meets the criteria of what they need at that moment.
Right. And I'm thinking there's people in the ICU, there could be people in comas, there could be people in all sorts of different conditions. How do you deal with moving people who really can't move themselves?
That's when we had called in ambulances from everywhere. We didn't have any ambulances ourselves in Paradise. We all always had to get the ambulances from Chico or Oroville, surrounding communities. And we got on the phone and got all of the ambulances that were available anywhere and had them coming to our hospital. And we were trying to see which patients absolutely had to go in an ambulance and how many could just go in regular cars. And staff members were actually putting patients in their cars and taking them in their own cars. And the rest of the patients, we got their families there as quickly as possible and got them in family cars and got them evacuating. Um, we actually only had a few patients that needed ambulance, and only two patients in the ICU. And one was able to go in one of the ambulances, and the other patient was actually actively dying at the time of the fire. And we were able to make sure that that person was stayed completely comfortable, and the family knew what was going on at all times. But
So this
we
was
evacuated.
a big deal, a really
Yeah,
big deal.
yes, it's a huge deal. We evacuated 69 patients in 45 minutes. That is unheard of, in my opinion. I've never seen that happen. But
So you're in the midst of this evacuation, you're focused on this, but are you also starting to think about yourself and your house and your family?
well, once we got word that the hospital was being evacuated, I got on the phone to my husband and said, "I'm evacuating, and we're evacuating to Chico, so I'll be at the Enloe Hospital." And my husband said, "I'm evacuating us. The fire's here." And I said, "Oh my God." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm grabbing your mom. I'm grabbing the important papers." And I said, "Grab all of our laptops and just be careful and get out as quickly as possible." And that was all he was able to grab. My mom.
What was this conversation like with your husband? I mean, was it calm? Was it matter of fact?
It was calm, actually, because I trusted him, and he knew that we had always talked about if there's a disaster, where I would be at the hospital or the nearest whatever healthcare facility I was working in. And so he knew where I would be, and he knew that I would let him know as soon as I could where I was going to end up being, and he would meet me there. So the plan was for he and mom to meet me at Enloe Hospital in Chico. And so they would make their way there as quickly as possible. And then I would meet them there as soon as I was able.
So you leave the hospital. Were you responsible for taking any patients with you?
No, no. By the time I was let go from the hospital, I told my director that my house was being evacuated and that my family was evacuating. And she said, "Go, just go and meet us at Enloe and meet your family there. Make sure they're okay. And you've done everything that you could here." The patients were lined up in the ER, being taken one by one in whatever means they could get into. And so I was able to go to my car to try and get to Enloe Hospital because I knew I was going to have to help the nurses at the Enloe Hospital get all of these patients in a safe place in their facility. So that was my plan when I left the hospital, was to drive straight to Enloe.
So you leave the hospital, you walk to your car. How different was that walk to your car from when you walked from your car to the hospital earlier?
It literally went from being daytime to nighttime. It was that dark. It was 10:30 in the morning when I walked out of the hospital, and it looked like it was 10:30 at night. It was that black and that dark. The lights were all on from the different in the parking lots all around the hospital, and people were trying to get out of the parking lot of the hospital as quickly as they could, but there was so much traffic. And then I was trying to get to my car from a different place in the hospital, and I had to try and figure out how to get back to where I actually parked my car because I had left out of a totally different door from where I went in. And it was smoky. It was breathing was tough because it was so smoky, and that's why it was like it was night. And I had grabbed just a surgical mask on my way out the door because that's all I could grab, I could find, and put that on to help with the smoke, and made my way to my car. And as I got into my car, um, I was turned off everything that would bring any of the outside air in. I had only, just the air conditioner on basically to keep um, everything cool as possible, and to keep uh, the smoke out. And then I made my way out of the hospital parking lot with everybody else.
Was there sort of a backup as you were leaving the
Oh yeah.
hospital?
Oh yeah, there was. There were two roads that you can use to get out of the hospital, and originally I turned right out of the hospital parking lot, and then I was told by someone that had just gotten out of there, as they were driving by slowly, they were yelling, "Don't go down that road, it's all on fire. Turn around and go back." So and go the other way. So I had to do that. I turned around in a turnaround area that I could find. And as I'm turning around, the wind was so strong that a branch from an oak tree, a huge branch from an oak tree, fell and hit my car and bounced off my car because the wind was so bad. It was at that point, I was told later that the wind was about 60 mile an hour, 60 to 70 mile an hour at that point.
Are you panicking, or are you just very clear headed, like, I've got to get out of here? How are you feeling at this point?
I'm scared. I was scared, but I wasn't. I wasn't panicking. It's just not in my nature to do that. Um, and then I just knew I knew where I was going. I knew how I had to get there, and I just kept going. I was following other cars, so I wasn't alone. Um, and I was doing what I knew how to do to get out of the area because I knew that was what I had to do. I had to get out of the area to a safe place. And as I was driving down, I was directed by policemen down Pearson Road. They were trying to keep the traffic um, from backing up. They were trying to have people go um, one way and the other to make sure that the traffic wasn't standing still, that it was at least moving. So I went down Pearson Road, and as I got down Pearson Road, I realized this is not good. This is not good at all. That's when I started to think, okay, this could be a bad thing. This could really be a bad thing for me. Because there was fire on both sides of the road, and then people were abandoning cars, and the cars were catching fire. And that's when I thought, okay, and it was quite hot in my car. I could feel the heat. Um, and I thought, okay, this could be it. That's when I started thinking, this is not the way I wanted to go.
You were driving a car that I'm very familiar with, a Chevrolet Volt. I love
Yeah,
that car,
me
but
too.
I don't know if that's the car that I would want to be in this kind of situation, because it's an electric, well, it's a hybrid, but it has that pretty big electric battery in it. And I would be worried about that thing exploding right under me. Was that anything that you worried about at the time?
At the time, I was more worried about the gas tank, the other side of the car, the gas tank exploding. That was
I suppose
more
there's a
my
few things
concern.
that could have exploded
Hmm.
on that car. So you're driving along, and it sounds like there is police presence there. Are you seeing a lot of police lights, the red and blue as you're going along? Are they, I mean, what are they doing? Are they directing traffic, setting up roadblocks, rescuing people? What do you see as you're going along in terms of what the police are doing?
The only police that I saw were directing traffic. But I was not paying attention to what they were doing because I was paying attention to the road. So, and then as I got onto Pearson Road, there were no more police. There were no more, there was just cars, traffic backed up and going very slowly. In fact, I kept hitting the car in front of me to try and get it to go faster because things were not looking good. And as I was trying to get out, something in my head said, unlock your door. And I went, oh, yeah, somebody might need to get in. And so I did. I unlocked all my doors. And just then, about a minute or two later, I don't even know if it was 2 minutes, but someone pounded on my door and opened my door and jumped in. And it was the nurse who was behind me. Her truck caught fire. And she threw her drinking water on her and just jumped out of her truck and into my car. And I just yelled at her. She said, I'm sorry, but my truck's on fire. I said, get in. Let's get the hell out of here.
And you also talked about as you're driving along, you talked about exploding pine trees
Yeah.
along the way. I mean, what did that look like? And did it make like a big flash and a bang, or what was it like?
It was like a firecracker, a Roman candle going off, a combination of a firecracker and then a Roman candle. What happened is the pine trees, they were sugar pines, and sugar pines have sap in them that when the sap heats up, it explodes. And so the tree explodes. And when there was so much fire burning, that there and wind, that when an ember would hit one of the trees, they were all dry because we'd been in drought for a long time. Um, then the tree just went up like a Roman candle, and then it would explode out like a big firecracker, and the trunk would explode.
This lady who's in the car with you, what are you saying to each other as you're driving?
Well, first we introduced ourselves because we didn't know each other. We had no idea who each other were because she worked night shift and I worked day shift. So we introduced each other, and she said she was on the phone to her daughter in Las Vegas. So she was talking to her daughter, trying to keep her daughter apprised of what was going on, and her daughter was trying to get information. She took my name and a phone number for my husband so that she could call him and let him know what was going on and where I was. So while we're trying to get going and get someplace faster, the traffic was so bad that we're watching all the things explode around us, and then the propane tanks from the houses that were burning started exploding. And so, and then also the cars that were left on the side of the road, if they got hot enough, their gas tanks were exploding. um, and I looked at Karen, who was the nurse that was with me, and she looked at me, and we just started praying out loud. um, God, please get us out of here. Um, and we just kept praying the whole way that we were trying to get out. Our prayer was pretty much, God, get us out of here. If it's your will, please get us out of here. Just get us out of here. Don't let this happen. Don't let us die this way. And that was over and over. That's pretty much what we prayed. Get us out of here. Help us get out of here.
Do you think that there were people behind you on that road that day who did not make it?
Not behind me, but in front of me. Yes.
In front. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. There were
Because it sounds to
families
me
that
like
didn't make
there
it.
were if your car catches on fire, you have to obviously get out of your car. You can't keep driving it, but it seemed like the safest thing to do was to just keep going and get out of that situation as quickly as possible. So the people who had to exit their cars, what would they have done with walls of fire on either side of them, the situation's getting worse by the second? What were their options?
They got out of the car and they ran. One of the nurses that I knew, who I ended up being evacuated to the helipad with, she had that happen to her, and she jumped out of the car and just started running. And she got as far as she could get, as she was out next to the Cal Fire truck. And the Cal Fire truck, the people in the Cal Fire firemen in the truck opened their door and grabbed her and said, "Get in here. You cannot be out there. It's too dangerous." And they pulled her into the Cal Fire truck. And other people were pulled into other people's cars.
Just
Once,
like you. I mean, you rescued this lady.
yeah, Yeah.
And I just imagine that anybody who wasn't rescued or couldn't manage to get into another car, they would be in pretty bad shape
Yes.
if they were out there kind of facing those horrific conditions. So, how long did it take for you to get from your hospital to this hospital in Chico?
Well, first of all, we couldn't get off of Pearson Road. We couldn't go down Pearson Road. So Cal Fire, what they did was, um, and I know this by the nurse that I talked to later, the one that got pulled into their truck. They were told, Cal Fire was told by their over their radio that no one could rescue them because the smoke was too thick. There was no way for anybody to come get them. And they were trying to figure out what they were going to be able to do when the bulldozer driver came from Cal Fire, came by and went up the road, and Cal Fire then they talked to each other, the truck and the bulldozer driver, and the bulldozer driver radioed and said he was going to go back down the road and push off all the burnt out cars to make a way for us to turn around and go back to the hospital to shelter in place, because there was a fire truck at the hospital with water that was able to kept the fire away from the hospital at that point. And so that was our only option. And so the Cal Fire firemen got out of their truck, one of them, and with a bullhorn told us to stay in our cars, but to turn around and uh, go back to the hospital. And they led us to the turnaround point, and we turned around and they led us back to the hospital.
How we escaped.
Hi, Rob Drake here. Do you have a story of escape to share with us on the How We Escaped podcast? We'd love to hear your story and to consider airing it on our show. You can contact us right now by heading over to howweescaped.com and filling out our contact form. That's howweescaped.com. You can also reach out to us on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram.
You're listening to the How We Escaped podcast with Rob Drake.
In your mind, did it seem like a good idea to be going back to the hospital?
Yes, because they said that there was a fire truck there with water and there was no fire there. And so I figured, well, the hospital has a big parking lot. There's big parking lots and there's no trees in the parking lot. So there's no fuel for the fire. There's fuel around the hospital, but not, I mean, there's places where we could actually stay in our cars and be sort of relatively safe. Or if we had to, we could go to the newer part of the hospital. And if there's a Cal Fire a fire truck there with water, we might be able to be okay, at least until the fire burned past us. Um, and so that seemed like it made sense. And when we got to the back to the hospital, a water main had broken, and I drove my car through the water to put out any embers that might have been on the car driving through there
And then where did you park your car?
in the emergency room parking lot.
And
Um,
you stayed in the car or did you get out?
no, we Karen and I got out, and as we got out of the car, she said, "Oh my God, Erin, we're still alive. We made it. We're still alive." And we made it into. We went into the hospital to see if we couldn't, if there was anything we one could get to drink because we were extremely thirsty, uh, and also to see if we could find some masks or something to get, because the smoke was so bad. We knew we needed either a new surgical mask or an N95 mask if we could find it.
And where were all the patients by now? Had they been evacuated or did they have to come
Yes.
back as well?
No, they had all been evacuated except for one ambulance, and that ambulance ended up back at the hospital too. The patient was a patient that she had been in surgery, and was she wasn't able to ambulate yet, so she was still on her gurney, and but she was safe. She was back at the hospital safe along with the ambulance crew.
And so there are fire trucks there, or at least one fire truck. And are
One
they
more.
spraying water on the
Yes.
building?
Yes. They were spraying on the roof of the hospital to try and keep the roof and the parts of the hospital, the newer part of the hospital and any other part of the hospital they could, wet, so that if the embers came down, because they were raining down everywhere at that point, that if they hit the roof, they wouldn't catch fire. The roof wouldn't catch fire. So that's what they were doing. And so we went into the hospital to see if there were other people in the hospital and to see what we could do. One, to get water for us and something to drink, and also something to eat to keep our strength up, and then also to see if there's any place in the hospital that we could go to get away from the smoke, to try and keep from having so much smoke inhalation.
And were you able to find food and water? I imagine there would be bottled water there, but was the main lines for the water still in operation?
No, no, they weren't, and the electricity was out. There was no emergency. The emergency generator was gone. It was pitch black in the hospital, so we all turned on our cell phone flashlights and made our way through the dark of the hospital. We ended up down on the basement level of the hospital because that seemed to be the best place to get somewhat fresh air. Um, and so we ended up down there for a little bit, and we had some food. There was food, like fruit and different things that we got from the cafeteria, and water down there. And we were able to rest for a bit, catch our breath literally, and then make our way. Karen and I decided to make our way back to the outside of the emergency room, because that's where they'd set up a triage center for people that, like us, that ended up back at the hospital. So we went up there to help.
And what did you see at the triage center? Were there people with grave injuries who were coming in?
Not grave injuries, no, but there were elderly people that had been in board and care homes or assisted living facilities, and they ended up having to come back, and they came to the hospital in vans from their facilities or board and cares, and or in people's the board and care owners' home cars. They came back to the hospital, and they were in some of them were in their pajamas, because this fire started at 6:30 in the morning, and so they were some of them not even dressed, and so when they ended up coming through, they were shivering. I went back into the hospital and grabbed as many blankets as I could find, and kept bringing out blankets for them. Um, and trying to get them warm and also giving them water and whatever they needed. Um, and there was one the one person that was actively dying, was being attended by a physician and some nurses, keeping them comfortable and basically holding their hand while they passed.
Did they pass
Yes,
that day?
yes.
Wow.
But it was not from the fire. Uh, it was from disease process. It was anticipated. There was nothing more they could do, and they were just.
How was the stress and anxiety of this day already affecting people at the hospital?
Yeah, there were most of the people that, including the staff, including us, were pretty much in shock, and just moving by rote. The healthcare practitioners and the emergency management people were just doing what they practiced day in, day out, for this type of disaster. We were just doing what we needed to do and trying to help the poor patients that were coming back to the hospital, not knowing where to go, just trying to keep them safe and keep them comfortable. Some of them had their dogs with them, their cats with them. I mean, we were trying to keep everybody comfortable.
So at some point, you decide to venture out again. How long were you at the hospital when you went back, and why did you leave again? Or at what point did you decide to go out again?
Well, the hospital basically caught fire, and so we were told we could not go back into the hospital, and we had to stay out of the hospital. Well, um, I had left my purse down in the basement area in the maintenance department. With people watching it. There were maintenance crew there, watching things, and I had gone up to help in the triage area, and then I went to go back in the hospital to get my purse because my car keys were in my purse. And I was told, you can't go back in the hospital. I said, I have to go back. I have to go get my car keys. And they said, nope, you can't. So then Cal Fire said, we're evacuating everybody to the helipad because it's too dangerous to stay where we were. So we had to move all of the equipment, the crash carts, the gurneys, the wheelchairs, everything to the helipad, as well as the patients that were had been coming back to the hospital. Well, they were really, I shouldn't say patients, they were community members that had made it back to the hospital. And so we got them and moved everybody to the helipad. And we were on the helipad when watching the hospital burn, basically. And I I was able to call from the helipad. I had some bars, so I was able to get word to my husband and my mother that I was safe. I was safe, but I was on the helipad, that we had to evacuate to the helipad. And my phone ran out of juice at that point, and it just went dead on them. So they didn't know what happened to me, whether I burned up or whether what had happened. And I didn't know, I couldn't get any other message out. So we were on the helipad, and Cal Fire pulled all of the staff members together that from the hospital and said, "There's no one coming for us. We can't get rescued because of the smoke." It was lighter than it had been. It wasn't looking like nighttime anymore. It was more like evening. Um, and so, but they said it was still too bad. But the fire had burned down enough that we could, if we caravanned out quickly, we could get to the highway and get out of the area, the burn area. And so, or we could stay on the helipad and wait it out. And we all said, no, let's go, let's go. And we put patients in our cars, and we just basically got as many people together as possible, and we just caravanned out.
Yeah, and so this time you were a guest in somebody else's car. Who did you ride with, and how many people were in your vehicle as you left the parking lot?
I was in a Honda Pilot, which is a big SUV, and there were two patients or two community members. They were not healthcare people in the car with us. One of the doctors was driving the car. It was her car, and myself and the nurse Karen, who was with me in my car, was in that car, as well as Nicole, who had been in her truck caught fire, and she was the one that was in the car with Campfire, and so she was in that car with us as well, and we were the first car to leave. We were the head of the caravan, and as we were driving, there was smoldering fire on the roads, and there were downed power lines, and most of the houses had burned, but there were some that didn't look like they were even touched. It was weird. It was weird going through. It was like an, an apocalyptic scene when we drove through it. Um, the fire was smoldering, but it wasn't actively roaring. Um, and we were able to drive out. The driver, she was wanting to be as careful as possible, but I knew we had cars behind us, and I said, "You've got to go, just go." And she's going, "But I don't know if I want to go over the downed power lines." I said, the power lines are there's no power through them at this point, and even if there is, you have rubber tires. Just go, go, because we've got people backed up behind us.
And did she take your counsel?
Yes,
Did she
yeah,
put the
yeah,
pedal to the metal finally?
she did. Yeah.
You finally get to the hospital in Chico on the second try. How long of a journey was that?
We tried to get to the hospital, but we had to go to Oroville instead of going to Chico because the fire had jumped the highway, and we couldn't go down the highway that we wanted to go towards Chico. So we had to go into Oroville, and we stayed at the doctor. We just basically went to a friend of hers house, and we stayed there for a while the fire was they were trying to get the fire under control on the highway so that anybody could get back to over to Chico.
Yeah, and that was a really interesting visit that you had because you talked about, I mean, you really just show up at this doctor's house, right? They weren't expecting you, and they were so hospitable.
Oh my God, they were just moving. These friends of the doctor were moving into that house it was a rental, and they were moving that day. They had just moved. They still had boxes everywhere. And we showed up, and they were so wonderful. They just said, "Come on in." They wrapped us in blankets. They said there was no chairs, so we sat on the floor. They gave us water, they gave us food, as much as they could find, and said, "Rest, just rest." Um, and they were wonderful.
And by this point, how many hours were you into this ordeal? Because it sounded like the fire, like you said, it started pretty early. What time of the day was it by the time you get to Orville and get to this house?
It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were exhausted. We were smelled like smoke. We were, smoke on our faces. I mean, ash on our faces, on our clothes. We were very happy to get somewhere where we could just sit down out of the in some clean air. And So we stayed at this house for an hour, and then one of the nurses' sister came and said, "I'm going back to Chico. Um, I'll take you back there." And so they said that the road is open again. So if you want to go, I said, yes, I need to go. That's where my family is. I need to get to Enloe. And so she was able to take us to myself and Karen, the nurse that was with me, and then Nicole it was her sister who was driving the car, and take us back to all to Enloe. And we didn't get to Enloe until about 5:30 that evening.
And did you know by this point where your husband and your mom were?
I just knew they were somewhere in the hospital. I didn't know where. I had no idea where.
Because
Um,
you had talked about meeting them there at some point in the day.
I did get a hold of him from somebody who let me use their cell phone at the doctor's friend's house. And I did know they were at Enloe, and he said, come to the lobby. And that's all I knew. And I didn't know where in the lobby. I didn't know how many other people were in the lobby. I had no idea. When when I got to Enloe and went through the ER, the whole ER waiting area was full of people. It was just wall to wall people, and I was able to get through to the lobby of the hospital, and finally I saw my husband, and I just ran to his arms, and my mom was right there, and we all just kind of started crying and hanging on to each other.
Your husband and your mom, how long had they been there before you got there?
They've been there since about noon.
And they were just there kind of hanging out in the lobby. And I mean, did the hospital provide food for people? I mean, what were people doing at the hospital?
Just waiting to hear about their family members, and or being there because they had no place else to go. The town was completely devastated, so 52,000 people had to evacuate, and were displaced, and they went wherever they could go. And that's there was no place. A lot of people didn't have any place to go. They just went to the hospital because that they knew that was a place they could go.
So when you saw your husband, when you spotted him there in the lobby, what was your feeling as you rushed towards him?
I was glad that he was okay. I was glad that my mom was okay, and I was glad that we were all together finally. It was just a relief to be with family.
Erin, at what point in this story did you find out for sure that your house was gone?
We didn't find out for sure that our house was gone for 2 weeks, for sure.
But you must have suspected.
We did. We suspected because BJ, my husband, said that there was a fire, and the fire had gotten to our yard, and one of the trees next near our house had gone up, and that's like a Roman candle. He tried with a garden hose to keep the fire from going to the tree, but an ember blew into the tree, and the whole tree went up, and that was between our house and the neighbor's house. And if any embers from that tree went to our roof, our house would have gone up. I knew it would have. So he knew it would have too. He was pretty sure our house didn't make it.
And did you find out because you went back to look, or did someone tell you?
No, our insurance adjuster, they weren't allowing us back in for a couple of weeks. And the insurance adjuster they were allowing the insurance adjusters in, and the insurance adjuster called us and told us our house was gone. He said, "I'm standing here in front of your house," or where it was, "and it's totally I'm recommending a total. It's totaled. There's nothing left except for your chimney. And we were just, okay, that's what we were afraid of, but we were just kind of hoping about that our house was still standing. But he said no. He said, "I'm so sorry. It's gone."
Even though you expected it and perhaps you were somewhat prepared for it, it still must have been a jarring moment for you
Oh yeah, I cried. My
to hear it.
husband, I cried. My husband just, he probably was crying too. I don't know. I know I was. So, but we were holding each other, going, "Well, we kind of knew it."
But on that day of the fire, you're finally reunited with your husband and your mom, and you have to look for a place to stay. It sounded like that was quite the challenge to find a place to stay. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was. Um, all I can say is, if anybody ever has to go through this, I was really thankful we had credit cards because we were able to use credit cards to get a hotel. But it was the first hotel that we were able to make a reservation at was in Williams, um, and that was quite a ways away from Chico or anywhere near Chico. And it was about an hour away from Paradise. Um, and we were able to get a hotel there. But then when we got there to the hotel, there were lots of cars in the parking lot. And when we went in to check in, they said um, the hotel was overbooked and that we really didn't have a reservation. We were like, well, what do we do? Where do we go? And so we just kept driving. We got back in the car and just kept driving. And we ended up at a Best Western in not until we got to this Davis that we found a place to stay for the night. And that was about 2 o'clock in the morning by the time we got there.
But it must have been such a relief
It
to have a
was.
place to stay.
It was. It was kind of weird. We went into the hotel room and we just, it was like, okay, we have nothing, no pajamas to put on, nothing. We just have what we have on, and we've been wearing it all day, and we have no toothbrush, no nothing. It was nice to get in a bed and finally relax, but it was so weird to be somewhere with nothing.
So really all you had were the clothes on your backs,
And our cell
literally.
phones. Yeah.
Did you sleep that night? I mean, it sounds like you got there really early in the morning, but were you able to rest?
I fell asleep right away, but then an hour later, about 3:30 in the morning, I woke up. I don't know why, probably just jarred awake from all of what had happened. Um, and I could smell smoke and I panicked. I thought, "Oh my God, that the hotel's on fire now." And but then I finally realized, "Oh my God, it's my clothes."
Oh.
It's me. And I started laughing. I mean, my husband was sound asleep, but I'm laughing hysterically because I'm just like, "Oh my God."
Well, I really appreciated how you took us, your readers, through the recovery process with you step by step. I mean, just a lot of interesting details about that. And we don't have time to get to all of that, but I just wanted to ask, what was it like working with the insurance companies? You call them up and what do they tell you?
Well, our insurance company was really, really helpful. They were wonderful. They immediately said, "We're going to pay for your hotel," because that's where we were. We ended up in the East Bay in Dublin, California, because that's where my mother's sister was. And I knew she needed to be someplace with family. And so we ended up there, and the insurance company said, we'll we know about the fire, no worries. We'll take care of the just find a place, and we will pay for your room and pay for a place to stay up to your maximum amount, which was, I think we had $30,000 for to a place to stay. And we found a hotel that was a residence hotel, but the only thing was really kind of hard that they wouldn't pay us the money, they were paying the hotel. So the hotel and the insurance company had to agree on how to do that. And in the meantime, we actually had to pay for our room up until the insurance and the hotel could work out their arrangement. So we paid for about 5 days worth on our own. We got it back. We got the money back, but we were really glad we had a credit card with a high limit.
You talked a bit about people who didn't have insurance, and I'm thinking, how could people live in a fire-prone area like that and not have insurance?
Some of the people there, a lot of people, they own their house outright. And if you own your house outright and you don't have a mortgage, you're not required to have a home insurance.
If you live in an area that is prone to fires, and I suppose that insurance is very expensive in
Oh yeah.
California, or maybe especially in those areas, but it just seems like you would be taking such a tremendous risk to not have insurance.
Yeah, you are. And many people did. A lot of people also rented there, and they didn't have renter's insurance. And the people that own the houses, they had insurance, but they weren't required to pay for anything that their renters lost. That's not a requirement. So some people did. I mean, helped pay for replacement of their of properties, but others didn't. It's just in the book I tell people you really are on your own for at least 2 weeks, and you have to be able to take care of yourself for that at least that long, if not a month. You're responsible, even though your house is burned, you're still responsible for that mortgage payment. So we had to go to the bank and ask them to defer our payments until we could get the insurance to settle, because we didn't have any money. We couldn't even we had nothing to prove. My husband had proof that he had his ID, but I had no ID. My purse was in the hospital. And so I had nothing to prove who I was.
Was the bank willing to work with you?
Yes, they were. We had to go to the bank though and talk to them personally. And we had to go to also for my car. My car was stuck there and we didn't know what shape the car was in. And so we had to go also to the bank there where we had our car loan and ask them if they would defer until we could see the condition of the car. And we had to make arrangements for that. And they were only willing to do that for 90 days. So the mortgage they were willing to do it for 6 months, but the car insurance was only 90 days. And we also had to contact all of our creditors and say, you have to send us new bills because we don't know how much we owe you and we have no money right now. We have credit card, but we can't necessarily pay everything that way. So we had to contact our creditors and let them know what was going on. We had to contact the Comcast, our satellite, our excuse me, our for our television and for our internet, we had to contact them and say, our house is gone, and would you please let us out of our contract? And they did, but it was, we had to go down to where they were in Chico. So we had to go from the East Bay back to Chico to talk to different people and make arrangements for that. It was tough.
It just sounds like it was a lot of busy work. I wanted to ask you about perhaps the most enduring image, or perhaps the most infamous image of paradise that kind of came out of this, and that was Donald Trump and Gavin Newsom. I think they were together, right? They
Yes.
visited paradise together. Do you feel like the government, whether it was the state government or federal government, did they really do anything that helped this situation?
The federal government, no, not much. In fact, Donald Trump called, he didn't even call us by the right name. Our town he called it Pleasure. Um,
That's right. I remember that.
and um, and that was really a really bad thing for him, because a lot of our neighbors were voted for him and really were happy to have him in office until then. And um, they immediately, once that happened, they were mad, and that's it, never again. And he lost a lot of votes. He blamed all of us too. He said we didn't rake our forest. That was our fault.
That's right. At the end of the day, though, who did take the blame for this fire?
No one even wanted to take the blame for the fire, but through investigation, they found out it was PG&E's fault that the fire started. The 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 line that fell and started the fire in Polga Gap, that was 99 years old and there was no evidence that it had ever been checked in 99 years by PG&E. And it rusted. A coupling that was holding the wire rusted, and the wire broke and fell, and it was an open line, and it sparked the fire.
I did want to ask you just about how you recovered from this. What was it like mentally and emotionally in the initial days? And then as time went on, how did you deal with this?
Initially, I was in shock for about at least 2 weeks, if not more. And then I was able to realize I was having a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder, um, and I knew I needed to get help. So I contacted online uh, the um, mental health in Butte County, and asked online, searched for um, places that I could go to get some counseling, and was I found out that a lot of the mental health workers in the area and in California were giving help to the fire victims for counseling for free, for a certain amount of time, to help them with their immediate trauma. And they were doing trauma h- uh, trauma therapy to help people cope with their immediate trauma, to help them get at least to a point where they could manage on their own. And then, if they needed further counseling, they were referring them to counselors in there wherever they were living to get more counseling if they needed it. So that's how initially got help. And then after that, it was a lot of reading and a lot of learning about PTSD. I knew some things. Being a nurse, you know it exists. You know what it is, but I didn't know the symptoms. I didn't know that a lot of the symptoms of PTSD are very vague and very strange symptoms. Like a lot of the things was happening to me was I wasn't able to really keep my mind on things. My mind would wander, and I couldn't. I couldn't think of the right words that I needed to explain things to people. And I'm thinking, this is not normal. I'm not like this. And I didn't know that that's part of PTSD. I did not have a clue. Also, didn't know that PTSD never really goes away, that you will have it for the rest of your life. You learn to live with it, but it doesn't go away.
Has that been the case with you, where it's something that does rear its ugly head once in a while, but you've just learned how to deal with it?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I had a episode recently and I was shocked that it reared its head again. I was watching a movie, and in the movie there was fire and explosions, and I finally I was getting more anxious and more anxious, and I said, I can't watch any more of this. And I couldn't figure out why. I mean, it was a movie I'd seen before. It wasn't anything new. I knew all this was going to happen, but it was just, I hadn't seen it since the fire. And so when I saw the explosions, saw the fire, saw the forest fire happening, I can't watch this. And I went in the other room and actually was shaking. I couldn't believe. Yeah. So yeah, it does happen still. I know what it is now. So when it does happen, I write it out. I know I'll be okay, but it's there and it will be for a while, I'm sure.
Erin, is there anything positive that has come out of this for you as a person?
Yes. I actually, my whole family, we are not. We used to be more material. We were always wanting to have nice things, and now we think it's just stuff. We're alive, and that's what counts. Is that we lived through it, and the rest is just stuff. I mean, eh. So now I don't buy the nicest stuff anymore. I buy what I need, and only what I need. If I want something, sure, I'll buy it. But I'm not wedded to whatever I have. In fact, every year I go through and I purge stuff. I get rid of stuff that I don't, if I don't wear something again, oh, I'll give it to somebody who might need it. And I'm constantly giving to other reuse places that, Goodwill, whatever. It's just stuff.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think as Americans, especially, we love our stuff and we love to have our houses full of stuff. And I have been a minimalist for a long time, partly because I've moved around quite a bit. But I love to do what you just talked about, is just, once in a while taking inventory of what I have. And if I feel like I have too much of anything, I give it away because I know I don't need it. And why have it around? Do you feel like you're a different person now than from before the fire?
Yes, I feel totally different. Before the fire, I was more self-absorbed, I guess. I'm not, I won't say I was selfish, but I was much more selfish than I am now. I'm not that self-absorbed. I'm able to laugh at things. I'm not so serious. I still am serious, but not to the extent I used to be. I can laugh at just about everything now, and the worst things happen and I just go, "Oh God," and then start laughing. So I am not as serious, and I have said to myself, "You know what? I'm going to live life to the best I can and be happy."
Well, that is profound, Erin. Thank you for sharing that. And before we end, I did just want to talk about that last chapter in your book where you give some really practical advice to people about how to be prepared. Because as we talked about, you left your house that day having no idea about what was going to happen. And so, what are just a couple things that you could share with our listeners about being prepared?
One of the things that I what I was glad we did was make sure that your important papers, that you have them in one place, and preferably if you can put it somehow on a thumb drive or something where you can keep it away from your house, put it in a safety deposit box, or keep it someplace where it's not with your house, or you can grab it easily and run. I was really happy we did that. The other thing is to make sure, go review your insurance, all of your insurance. Make sure that you have the correct insurance. We did not have, my husband had um, a model train. He had several model train sets, and we had a piece of art that we spent good money on, and thousands of dollars actually. And because we didn't have replacement insurance for that, and it's called collector's insurance, we didn't have that. It was only replaced at the value of what it cost us at the time that we purchased it, and his model train sets weren't replaced at all. And we couldn't afford to re-buy the piece of art that we had. We had a photograph, and a beautiful photograph, professionally photographed by a famous photographer, and we could not afford to replace it. It had appreciated in value four times what we paid for it, and we couldn't get it replaced at that. We also, just before the fire, when we were purchasing our house, I got the fire insurance, and my husband said, "Oh, I don't think we need that much insurance. We could skimp on that." And I made sure we had much more than he thought we needed. And I said, "Nope, we're gonna do it." And he to this day he says, "Oh my God, thank you." But I also made sure that we had more auto insurance than he thought we needed. I mean, we just went through and upped our insurance. And to this day, we review our insurance every year to make sure we still have enough.
And you also mentioned something about in that chapter, the type of safe that people
Oh,
should have.
safes don't protect anything really, because my our son-in-law had a huge gun safe that was just a steel safe, and it was leaded. I mean, it was huge. And first of all of his ammo exploded out of it. The guns were melted, and everything, all the important papers that they stored in there were went up in smoke. They just because it's so hot in there it was so hot from the fire that it was like putting your important papers in an oven. They just burnt. So putting them in a safe doesn't guarantee anything. All of our jewelry, it was in what I thought was a safe. Nope. Safe place. Nope. It was melted, gone.
This chapter that you wrote was very thorough about, how to be prepared. And I would definitely recommend that our listeners go and pay attention to that chapter. Please go and get her book, Campfire Girl. You can find it on Kindle. It's also an audiobook on Audible, or you can have the book sent to your house from Amazon. Erin, tell us about your website, which I think our listeners would also find very interesting.
I have my own website, and it's basically www.eerratigan.com. And it is I try to have a blog. There's some information on there. My book, I talk about that also, but I do a blog. I try to do it monthly or at least quarterly, and give some more tips and things about what to do in the event of a disaster, particularly wildfire disasters. And I talk more about types of insurance, and also about how to put together what I call a to-go bag, so that you have it in your car or someplace where you can grab it quickly, and you have extra clothes, you have a credit card, you have maybe some money, some cash money, or just different things that you might think to have there, so that some things that you have, like toothbrush, toothpaste, that kind of thing, and be prepared for any kind of, it's really good for any kind of disaster, but in particular wildfires. The wildfires now are fast and furious. You don't have time like we used to. They come quick. There's nothing, you just have to get out, and you have to get out quick.
Erin, thank you so much for joining us on How We Escaped. What an amazing story. Be well.
Thank you.
You can tell us what you think about today's story by leaving us a comment on our YouTube channel, Facebook page, or on Instagram. You can find links to all of these on our website at howweescaped.com. Wherever you are listening, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Our next story is dropping soon, and you will not want to miss it. The Roman philosopher and orator Marcus Tullius Cicero once said, "Hours and days and months and years go by. The past returns no more. And what is to be we cannot know. But whatever the time gives us in which we live, we should therefore be content." Until we meet again, I'm Rob Drake. Yellabai.
Have a story to share with us? Visit howweescape.com to get in touch.
How We Escaped.